So it's nice to see you again.
You too.
I watched Twinless last night. Actually, I thought I completely sort of threw the rug from underneath my feet. So I'm a bit poorly, so I don't know if I'm getting the right phrasing right. But I thought it was one thing, and it just took me on this kind of wild journey that I wasn't expecting. So I wanted to ask about your first reactions, kind of reading the script, and did you have that same kind of oh shit moment that we did as an audience?
Well, first, I just want to say I'm so glad to hear you say that because when other people have asked me, "Oh, what do you hope audiences kind of come away with?" I think they'll be so surprised because they'll go in thinking it's one kind of movie, and then they'll realize, "Oh, it's not quite what I was expecting." But yeah, when I was reading the script, I too felt like a it was difficult to place it in one genre only. It felt quite fresh and quirky and a mix of tones in a way that I was curious to see how it come about on screen. And I think James really nailed it because, to your point, I think it's quite surprising at times, and it leads you a bit astray before surprising you again. So, yeah, I was excited at the prospect of also getting to play a more comedic role in something like this. So there were a lot of things that were appealing to about it to me.
Yeah, I mean that balancing of tones I mean it's one of the hardest things for filmmakers to get right, really. To kind of, I mean, at times it's a kind of dark thriller. It's got that kind of quirky indie feel to it, but it's also a comedy. It's a romance story. It has a kind of bit of everything. When you sign up to a project like that, is it almost quite nerve-wracking as an actor? Because I guess tone is one of those things. Sometimes you can only see the finished product to know if it was kind of successful. So when you kind of sign up, is it a bit of a leap of faith to some degree?
I kind of think that every time it's a leap of faith, even when on the page it seems ironclad one kind of genre, it will be exactly what it is on the page. You can never predict the outcome accurately. At least I can't. Or if you can never predict how people react to that product. So I feel like every time you sign up to something, it's a kind of, if you trust the person, then you take the leap of faith. And I really liked the script, and I had seen James's previous movie, and I was between talking to him and having seen his film and reading the script, I realized, okay, at the very least, this is someone who has a very, very, very clear and precise vision and way of working and kind of voice in his work. It's very particular because I'd also watched some of his shorts that he'd done. And so I knew that at the very least, he himself was absolutely sure of what it would turn out like. Um, and so that was it. I mean, it made, like I said, every job is a leap of faith in a sense, but there are certain things that you look for that give you the comfort to take that jump. And, those were all the things that kind of made me think, okay, this guy knows what he wants and knows what he's doing. So let's go for it.
Yeah, he's a talented guy. I mean, he's 35, which is makes me
Yeah.
incredibly jealous. But I mean, have you ever been on set before where the director has been one of the lead actors? What's the kind of process like in that regard when you're kind of the guy directing you, or is the person you're all kind of in the scene with? Is that a kind of new experience and a kind of different dynamic that you're used to?
Yeah, definitely. I've worked with writer directors a good few times, but writer director actor was definitely new. But to be honest, it didn't I mean he wore all the hats that he was wearing so beautifully and he was so composed about it all. But it actually didn't, again, coming back to the fact that because he was so clear on what he wanted, it didn't make it in any way more difficult to work with him in that way because obviously when he's playing Dennis, he's bringing a level to the tone that is exactly what he wants. And so I found it then easier to match the tone of what I was doing as Marcie to him. So it kind of gave me like a very clear signpost in the scene of where we should be pitching this. So I actually found it quite helpful, to be honest. I really enjoyed it. And as I say, because he's a very precise man who knows what he wants. Everything had a lot of clarity to it, which is always helpful for me, I find anyway, when I'm acting. So it was pretty seamless. And also it meant that there was you know, again, I've worked with directors who are not actors who have been amazing and phenomenal communicators, but there have been other times where you kind of have to do a bit of like decoding or translating of what they're trying to get out of you. You're like, what do they mean by that? Whereas I find that but it could be, I think, I mean, this is my guess, that with someone who's also an actor and who also wrote it and who's directing you and is in the scene with you, you just get to skip that translation. You know, he was able to communicate very effectively, kind of in an actor to actor way, exactly what he wanted. So, yeah, it was actually quite a smooth and seamless process, to be honest.
And even though I sort of mentioned some of the kind of themes or tones to this, so obviously there is the kind of humorous kind of side to it. At its kind of core, I suppose, it is a film about grief. And it's told in quite a sort of rather unusual kind of offbeat way. But there's been this kind of clip recently, I don't know if you've seen it doing the rounds, of Conan O'Brien talking about his parents passing. And he's with Will Arnett in this kind of podcast situation. They're talking about how they all made kind of silly jokes about how Jason Bateman was behind the whole kind of thing. And it was on this, and it's kind of opened up quite a kind of fresh and quite a new dialogue about kind of grief, perhaps the way away from the kind of expected kind of reactions, but everyone kind of resonated with it online. Do you think it's quite important for us to not make kind of grief a taboo or a cliche and to have kind of different conversations surrounding it, and sometimes even ones that are almost quite silly, sometimes quite comedic, to kind of help us navigate it in a different way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually really important, not only because, it's just important to talk about grief anyway, because I feel like it's become such a private thing that we feel quite nervous about even just bringing it up with someone who's grieving, but also because people grieve in different ways. There's no one correct way to grieve, and I think to kind of be prescriptive about it makes it then difficult for someone who isn't grieving in the standard way to open up about how they're feeling. So and also, it stems from the fact that we just don't talk about, like, in our culture, we just don't talk about death and grief enough. It's a part of life for most people at some point, for everybody at some point. And so yeah, I think it is important to talk about it more, and then also to your point, to kind of allow for the different ways of dealing with it. And also because different scenarios might call for different kinds of reactions. So I do I do think it's important, and I think people will like that about this film too, and how it can be, yeah, a pretty complex topic, but that doesn't mean that it has to be only ever serious. I also think it's about loneliness too, the movie, so that's another pretty universal theme. So I think there's just so much in it, and I think that that's one of the great things about it, is that there's something in there for everyone, I think.
Yeah, it's just like the premise. I mean, it kind of stops you in your tracks when you read about someone losing their twin. I mean, it's a kind of
Yeah.
moving, such a move. I mean, your character's reaction when she finds out he lost his twin, she just bursts into tears. And I think it is one of those things we don't really think about. And the second you hear it, you get to know, you get kind of weird sort of like, I don't know, hair stand up. It's one of those kind of, it really gets
Yeah.
a reaction out of you. But I wanted to talk about your character because I'm interested to know, because obviously you've played some sort of characters in the past that have got these quite sort of dark tendencies, as quite troubled, but I loved Marcie in this. She's got this very optimistic kind of view of the world. But I'm interested to know, can it sort of be harder sometimes to play someone like that? Because I suppose I'm not going to say there's more acting you can do when you play someone kind of darker and you kind of tap into different emotions. But when you play someone who's just very nice and very ordinary and very kind of optimistic, I guess that's more subtle in some ways than some of the other characters. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I definitely was more nervous playing Marcy than I have been playing any other character ever. Because, well, firstly, I just had never played someone like her. Um, and I've been very lucky and I've gotten to play some pretty satisfying characters, mostly because they're kind of on the darker end of the personality spectrum. And to your point, I do think that in terms of acting, when you have big emotions, especially the darker ones, they kind of ground you into the scene and into the character. It's easier to have something to kind of cling on to know that you're getting the performance, if that makes sense. And also because you're feeling it, right? So you're feeling a big feeling. You go, okay, I'm feeling this, therefore I'm feeling it. Like there's no, you can't kind of confuse it. You know what I mean? At the very least, you think, I don't know what the audience is seeing, but I know that I'm feeling this, which is a very, I think for me, safe. It's like a kind of a safe thing in the performance. Whereas, as what you say, when you're playing someone who's kind of just floating around, light and positive, it's quite difficult to know if you're actually capturing someone real and truthful, because there isn't that same kind of guardrail to hold on to. And so I found that quite tricky. And also adding in the kind of comedic layer. every day, I mean, I have a work journal that I keep and I flick through it and every day I was saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm out of my depth. I feel like I'm the weak link because I just had I was so kind of out of my comfort zone. But I actually ultimately really enjoyed that process. I kind of like feeling a little bit nervous and a little bit outside my comfort zone. So it was actually a very satisfying experience. But yeah, definitely one that was a little more anxiety inducing than other ones.
Do you often keep, is a work journal specific to this project, or do you always keep one for your
No,
different?
I always keep one on a project. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah,
great to look
because
back
I
on.
find it useful to look back on in times when I'm not working and go, oh my God, remember? I mean, it's peaks and troughs, right? When you're in a trough, it's quite difficult to remember that there are peaks. So I like to flick back through my work journal and go, oh yeah, remember that time you thought you'd never work again? And then we worked again. Let's remember that. And also, it's just sometimes nice to remember. I like just logging certain details about a job that I'll probably forget. I would forget if I didn't write them down. But yeah, it's very work specific.
Oh, cool. Because I mean, I feel like everyone needs a Marcie in their life. So I'm interested to know, who's yours? Have you got a Marcie?
I'm lucky. I have quite a few Marcies, I think, but probably my first Marcie that comes to mind is my mom. Yeah, my mom is a very positive person, and very can do and very forgiving. So, yeah, she's kind of the first one that pops into mind. But I'm very lucky. I have quite a few Marcies around. So,
And I mentioned obviously at the start, because obviously we met a few years ago at the Shooting Stars event. So I'm working up on this year's one already. And I mean, I think Danielle Gallagher from Ireland is kind of
oh,
in this year's
cool.
event, and she's great. And I'm really looking forward to spending some time
Yeah.
with her in Berlin. But I mean, we've also had in recent years, we've had Aina Hardwick and Fiona O'Shea as well being Shooting Stars, and of course yourself. Given the fact, of course, you've got Jessie Buckley's about hopefully going to win an Oscar. You've got Paul Mescal, Andrew Scott, Saoirse Ronan, and Barry Keoghan. I mean, there's this incredible array of talent coming from Ireland at the moment. Does it feel like quite an exciting time for the Irish film industry? Is that something that's you guys, if on the inside, is that something that feels like a real wave that you're kind of riding at the moment?
I think so. I mean, I think there have always been Irish actors that have been very well respected in the industry. I think the Irish have always seemed to be kind of great storytellers. What I think has changed is that now they're just being seen as great actors rather than great Irish actors. And that is a huge change because, it feels like it's not as limiting kind of a title as before, if that makes sense. As in, yeah, you can be a great Irish actor, but you're an Irish actor. Whereas I feel like, obviously with the people who broke through and beyond that, there are the exceptions, of course, but it definitely feels like we're on the same. It's like now American, English, Irish actors, they're all the same, if that makes sense, in terms of um, I guess standing in the industry, if that makes sense. So that is exciting, and fingers crossed for Jessie. She's so talented, and yeah, all the actors you mentioned are just so talented. So it's so cool to have such a strong representation from Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think? I mean, because obviously, I mean, it's a small nation. There's an incredible amount of talent that I just kind of reeled off. Why do you think that might be? I mean, does it come from kind of education and schooling? Is there encouragement from a young age to kind of, from be it from home or even just at school, to kind of express yourself in that kind of way? Because it is quite remarkable.
I think first and foremost it's just cultural. I mean, without being an actor, there are so many amazing storytellers. Like, you could go into a pub in Ireland and some dude will just tell a story in the most incredible way, or you might have an auntie or an uncle who just loves to tell us. Like Irish people love to chat and they love to tell a story. And there's obviously the music and writing and literature has always been a huge part of it, but it is also true that I think part of the school system is quite encouraging of everyone just having a go, not to become an actor or not to like study theater. It's just to kind of express yourself. I mean, it's so normal, at least it was when I was growing up. And it's actually how I started. It was so normal for kids to go to a speech and drama class on a Saturday, but not because their parents thought that they were going to be, actors or movie stars, just because it was something to do on a Saturday instead of like football or tennis or whatever. It was something like that, just another hobby or another activity. And so I think a lot of people have been exposed to it, and it's usually in school. It's usually you would put on a show, the whole year puts on a show. Like it is definitely part of life, just kind of storytelling or acting. And I mean, obviously, music is a huge part of the culture too, and music is just another way of, I guess, storytelling. So it's definitely a cultural thing for sure. Um, yeah.
And just on that sort of shooting stars thing one more time, because I mean, I remember at the time I thought, I thought you looked like such a sort of great act, sort of a great actor. And I really been loving watching your kind of career rise and rise and rise since then. I just interested to know that was shooting stars was obviously just one kind of little milestone, but have you got any kind of specific moments in your career that you kind of look back at as a real turning point, a moment where you thought, okay, this has changed things for me?
Hmm. I'm like, how honest should I be? No, I don't now because I used to do it in the opposite direction. I thought, oh, this will be something that might open doors for me. And I found that frequently they didn't. Or it didn't in the way that I was expecting it to, where people told me it would. So I'm very wary of looking at certain projects or moments as being the thing that changed something for me. Um, I mean, on a personal level, like obviously the Nightingale for me was one of my favorite jobs I've ever been a part of, and one of the most satisfying. And in some ways, it's down the line and a trickle opened certain doors, but there was a very different expectation around what that would do for my career, and it looked quite different after that. And there have been other things too, where like even when you get a job and then it falls apart. So I'm always I have tried really hard to kind of let go of that way of thinking about my career because I found it too hard, if that makes sense. And obviously I'm so lucky and so grateful to things like, the Screen Daily, Stars Tomorrow, or Shooting Star. But like when they're great and they're a lovely feeling to be acknowledged for the work that you've done. But can I say that that actually had any um, uh, definitive and kind of immediate change on my career or effect on my career? I don't know that I can. And so I'm trying really hard to not think that way in general about work.
Yeah. And just my sort of final question then, I just realised there's one sort of thing I haven't spoken about yet, which is Dylan. Because I've met Dylan on a couple of occasions and he's a really, really good laugh. I've had a couple of very fun interviews with him back in the Maze Runner days, I
Yeah,
think it
he's
was.
a hoot.
Yeah. What was it like? Because obviously in this you're working, because obviously well, he's playing kind of two characters here, but you're working with the character who's obviously going through quite a lot emotionally. So on screen, he's obviously quite, at times, he's a little bit kind of feeling quite sort of somber and stuff like that. But I know off screen, like you said, he's a real hoot. So what was he like to kind of collaborate on this project, and what was that kind of contrast like to work with him and then kind of hang out with him kind of off screen?
So much fun. I mean, as you say, he's just so much fun to be around, and he's also someone who takes the work seriously, but not himself seriously. And so it was just honestly so much fun. And to be fair, I didn't have many of the scenes in which he had to do like a lot of the very heavy emotional work. So we kind of just mostly got to have a laugh together. But I would work with him and again in a heartbeat. He's a very like generous actor in the scene, really good fun, up for trying things, up for making mistakes and going again. And he's kind of not afraid to get things wrong, and which I love in an actor. So um yeah, it was just great fun. I would love to do something else with him.
And just very, very finally, actually, before I go, just looking ahead, I know you've done a job with Jamie Adams. Now, I've seen a lot of Jamie's film. I've met Jamie a few times. Well, he's a very lovely guy. But his films, I know they're very kind of improvised, heavy, and I think they're a very unique way of kind of shooting
Completely
things.
improvised.
Yeah, like how was that experience for an actor? Because I mean, it's incredible. He's kind of keeping that kind of what's the name of that kind of mumblecore kind of that sort of that he's really keeping that alive. That kind of very indie style, kind of quite raw style of acting. How did you find that as an actor?
It was so much fun. I mean, I won't lie. So actually, James called me one day and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this improv movie. Do you want to do it?" I was like, "Sure." I was so scared because it had been a long time. I had done improv kind of on Ken Loach's movie, but it's a very different kind of improv in a Ken Loach movie. Jamie Adams's improv is like full-blown improv. And so I was scared at the prospect, but also excited, and I thought, whatever, this will be a laugh. And I actually really, I found it so freeing, so enjoyable. Again, it's one of those things that you have to go into going, all bets are off. Who knows what this is going to be like? But I worked with him twice now, and I have to say I find it so much fun, and I find it a real reset. You know, it kind of reminds me, oh yeah, acting can kind of just be a bit of fun, you know. So I really enjoy the process, and I think it's very good to kind of exercise that muscle in being 100% adaptable and kind of on your toes and just going with the flow. It reminds, you know, I think s- process, of course, has its place for certain kinds of projects, but sometimes I think it's really good to just not have any anything to go on and just have to go completely on instincts. And also it's very good and humbling to just be really, really bad sometimes and have to redo stuff. So yeah, it's a good one to keep the ego in check.
Well, he's got Tarantino in his next film, which is mad. I don't know
I
how.
know. Oh, I know. And Charlotte Gainsbourg.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll
That's
be.
Simon Pegg, I think, as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll be looking forward to seeing that. Well, thank you so much actually for speaking to me today. Always love seeing your face pop up in movies. I think you're
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Looking
So
forward to,
lovely chatting.
yeah, and I look forward to seeing whatever you've got next coming up.
Thanks so
All right,
much.
cool. Take care. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!